there to see this girl burnt, so that it got that satisfaction, without too much delay, it would be content. Presently the preacher formally summoned Joan to submit to the Church. He made the demand with confidence, for he had gotten the idea from Loiseleur and Beaupère that she was worn to the bone, exhausted, and would not be able to put forth any more resistance. And indeed, to look at her, it seemed that they must be right. Nevertheless, she made one more effort to hold her ground, and said, wearily, "As to that matter, I have answered my judges before. I have told them to report all that I have said and done to our Holy Father the Pope, to whom, and to God first, I appeal." Again, out of her native wisdom, she had brought those words of tremendous import, but was ignorant of their value. But they could have availed her nothing in any case, now, with the stake there and these thousands of enemies about her. Yet they made every churchman there blench, and the preacher changed the subject with all haste. Well might those criminals blench, for Joan's appeal of her case to the Pope stripped Cauchon at once of jurisdiction over it, and annulled all that he and his judges had already done in the matter, and all that they should do in it henceforth. Joan went on presently to reiterate, after some further talk, that she had acted by command of God in her deeds and utterances. Then, when an attempt was made to implicate the king, and friends of hers and his, she stopped that. She said, "I charge my deeds and words upon no one, neither upon my king nor any other. If there is any fault in them, I am responsible, and no other." She was asked if she would not recant those of her words and deeds which had been pronounced evil by her judges. Her answer made confusion and damage again. "I submit them to God and the Pope." The Pope once more. It was very embarrassing. Here was a person who was asked to submit her case to the Church, and who frankly consents, offers to submit it to the very head of it. What more could anyone require? How was one to answer such a formidably unanswerable answer as that? The worried judges put their heads together and whispered and planned and discussed. Then they brought forth this sufficiently shambling conclusion, but it was the best they could do, in so close a place. They said the Pope was so far away, and it was not necessary to go to him anyway, because the present judges had sufficient power and authority to deal with the present case, and were in effect the Church to that extent. At another time they could have smiled at this conceit, but not now. They were not comfortable enough now. The mob was getting impatient. It was beginning to put on a threatening aspect. It was tired of standing, tired of the scorching heat, and the thunder was coming nearer. The lightning was flashing brighter. It was necessary to hurry this matter to a close. Erard showed Joan a written form which had been prepared and made all ready beforehand, and asked her to abjure. Abjure? What is abjure? She did not know the word. It was explained to her by Monsieur. She tried to understand, but she was breaking under exhaustion, and she could not gather the meaning. It was all a jumble and confusion of strange words. In her despair she sent out this beseeching cry, "I appeal to the Church universal, whether I ought to abjure or not." Erard exclaimed, "You shall abjure instantly, or instantly be burnt." She glanced up at those awful words, and for the first time she saw the stake and the mass of red coals, redder and angrier than ever now under the constantly deepening storm gloom. She gasped, and staggered up out of her seat, muttering and mumbling incoherently, and gazed vacantly upon the people and the scene about her like one who is dazed, or thinks he dreams, and does not know where he is. The priests crowded about her, imploring her to sign the paper. There were many voices beseeching and urging her at once. There was great turmoil and shouting and excitement among the populace and everywhere. "Sign! Sign!" from the priests. "Sign! Sign and be saved!" And Loiseleur was urging at her ear, "Do as I told you. Do not destroy yourself." Joan said plaintively to these people, "Ah, you do not do well to seduce me." The judges joined their voices to the others. Yes, even the iron in their hearts melted, and they said, "Oh, Joan, we pity you so. Take back what you have said. or we must deliver you up to punishment." And now there was another voice. It was from the other platform, pealing solemnly above the din, Cochon's reading the sentence of death. Joan's strength was all spent. She stood looking about her in a bewildered way a moment, then slowly she sank to her knees and bowed her head and said, "I submit." They gave her no time to reconsider. They knew the peril of that. The moment the words were out of her mouth, Monsieur was reading to her the abjuration, and she was repeating the words after him mechanically, unconsciously, and smiling, for her wandering mind was far away in some happier world. Then this short paper of 6 lines was slipped aside, and a long one of many pages was smuggled into its place, and she, noting nothing, put her mark on it, saying, in pathetic apology, that she did not know how to write. But a secretary of the King of England was there to take care of that defect. He guided her hand with his own and wrote her name, Jehanne. The great crime was accomplished. She had signed. What? She did not know. But the others knew. She had signed a paper confessing herself a sorceress, a dealer with devils, a liar, a blasphemer of God and his angels, a lover of blood, a promoter of sedition, cruel, wicked, commissioned of Satan, and this signature of hers bound her to resume the dress of a woman. There were other promises, but that one would answer without the others, and that one could be made to destroy her. Loiseleur pressed forward and praised her for having done "such a good day's work," but she was still dreamy, she hardly heard. Then Cochon pronounced the words which dissolved the excommunication and restored her to her beloved church, with all the dear privileges of worship. Ah, she heard that! You could see it in the deep gratitude that rose in her face and transfigured it with joy. But how transient was that happiness! For Cochon, without a tremor of pity in his voice, added these crushing words, "And that she may repent of her crimes and repeat them no more, she is sentenced to perpetual imprisonment, with the bread of affliction and the water of anguish." Perpetual imprisonment! She had never dreamed of that. Such a thing had never been hinted to her by Loiseleur or by any other. Loiseleur had distinctly said and promised that all would be well with her, and the very last words spoken to her by Erard on that very platform, when he was urging her to abjure, was a straight, unqualified promise that if she would do it she should go free from captivity. She stood stunned and speechless a moment. Then she remembered, with such solacement as the thought could furnish, that by another clear promise made by Cochon himself, she would at least be the Church's captive, and have women about her in place of a brutal foreign soldiery. So she turned to the body of priests and said with a sad resignation, "Now, you men of the Church, take me to your prison, and leave me no longer in the hands of the English." And she gathered up her chains and prepared to move. But alas, now came these shameful words from Cochon, and with them a mocking laugh, "Take her to the prison whence she came." Poor abused girl! She stood dumb, smitten, paralyzed. It was pitiful to see. She had been beguiled, lied to, betrayed. She saw it all now. The rumbling of a drum broke upon the stillness, and for just one moment she thought of the glorious deliverance promised by her voices. I read it in the rapture that lit her face. Then she saw what it was, her prison escort, and that light faded, never to revive again. And now her head began a piteous rocking motion, swaying slowly this way and that, as is the way when one is suffering unwordable pain, or when one's heart is broken. Then drearily she went from us, with her face in her hands, and sobbing bitterly. End of chapter 20.